We're talking with Jake Setnar, Senior Mechanical Engineer and Program Manager at Phillips Healthcare, kind of to walk us through the transformation of retrofitting a 12,000-pound MRI Magnet cart. I know there's some early mobility challenges of the old cart to what's now a omnidirectional system engineered for precision, safety, and control. Just to start then, Jake, can you describe the original MRI Magnet cart and some of the challenges you had maneuvering it through your facility?
So the original design consisted of 4 air bearings, which is basically, think of a hovercraft. When you would give these air bearings air pressure through a big, thick, kind of heavy 3/4 inch air line. You also had to have power hooked up, AC power to the movement device. You would flip a switch, it would air the airbags up, and then you'd now be sitting on a curtain of air, which is pretty cool design. However, the issue was any cracks in the floor, any unlevelness, basically any debris, anything that could potentially get between that curtain of air and the floor itself would cause the bag to deflate. And then just like a deflated tire on a car, well, it becomes a lot harder to move. And in this case, essentially impossible for a human to physically move this device.
Sure. So is that, how did you contact Conceptual Innovations and kind of how did that come about, the project between the two of you?
Yeah, so a bit of a story to that. We'd gone to a engineering conference. At the time, it was in Massachusetts called East Tech, and I went there looking for a movement solution. However, not a single one of them that I inquired about could adapt their equipment to our already existing, car. So we have this big blue frame. We just needed to only change the movement technique and go to a different solution, and none of these companies could provide that. What happened was, we had almost honestly given up that there was just not going to be a better way to do this than what we were doing. And I had contacted Morgan at Caster Concepts. I had ordered a softer durometer wheel, give ourselves a little bit more traction. And Morgan had contacted me and said, hey, can I come out to your facility and just take a look? And I'll be completely honest, I kind of rolled my eyes, and the classic salesman just wanting to come and see your facility. And I was like, sure. Like, he was a nice enough guy. I'm like, fine, right? And I really never thought anything would come of it. At the end of the tour, he kind of hands me a flyer of all the different things that Caster Concepts does, and one of those things was the Conceptual Innovations branch of the company. And I was like, well, Morgan, why didn't you tell me about this an hour ago? We were kind of joking, but I looked through it and I noticed the OmniDrive and the various tank steer designs, and I was like, wow, this might actually be a solution that could work for what we need. So I immediately talked to various coworkers and, showed my boss and my boss's boss. And I said, listen, guys, let me reach out to these guys. And I just want your permission to fly out there and get a tutorial of it if I think it's going to be a good setup. And we've all, the whole company's been wanting to change this. And so they were very much on board. And that's what started the relationship with Conceptual Innovations. Obviously, it's grown from there considerably.
So did you see, did you get a chance then to see kind of your initial reaction when you saw the ability of the omnidirectional movement?
I had gone back and forth with Jim because Morgan had put me in contact with Jim and showed him what we currently had, showed him what we would really ideally want. We were originally exploring a tank steer system at that point, and he had given me just a real rough drawing and some YouTube videos, from your channel on kind of what a tank steer would look like. And we were all very, very interested in that. And, it seemed like it'd be something that would be game changer for our facility. And, from there, we then, got serious enough about it that we flew out to your facility. And, we were discussing the tank steer concept, in much more detail. In doing that, Jim, of course, smartly showed us the OmniDrive system and kind of realized the added benefit and just even further ease of transportation that would give us. Our facility is very tight. There's a lot of 90-degree corners. There's a lot of things in the way and people walking around. Having the, ultimate mobility of any axis of direction is very nice. And we would have lost a little bit of mobility with a tank steer, which for this specific application would have been a little bit less than ideal. So we wound up realizing, okay, OmniDrive is definitely the way to go. Devin and Tyler showed us some cool demonstrations. We loaded a bunch of weight on one, and we let me drive it around the factory and run into things. So it was it was a really good test. But no, they're actually very easy to drive. We were very impressed by just how simple it was to essentially take the controller with 30 seconds of training, instruction to just drive it and almost know exactly what you're doing to start with and not hit things. So that was really what we found very appealing as well.
Was there anything else you wanted to add that I might not have covered?
I think this is I think it's a solution to a problem that I bet a lot of companies have, and they just don't know that there's a solution out there for it. And I know how much of a safety hazard, we had in our facility that's now been solved. And if I could potentially help some other companies solve a similar solution and, potentially save somebody's life, right? Maybe that's a bit of an extreme example, but at least stop somebody from getting injured or make their life easier or not hurt their back or their shoulder or need some surgery, then that's a win for me. So that's kind of where my heart's in it from that perspective.